Ready to go?
Sure.
All right. Welcome back to another episode of the Surfside Recovery Podcast. Brian Licata over here alongside Mr. Ian Koch. I hope you guys have liked some of our content so far, even in our last couple podcasts. If you haven't done so yet, please follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, yada, 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 yada. Today, we got another user-submitted topic. This is the topic we want to discuss today is that purgatory period in a 12-step fellowship. And to kind of follow that up with the conversation that I was having with a friend of mine, he was more kind of getting to the period of time where you're kind of in the middle. And in the middle, meaning you're not doing too much, you're not doing too little, and it's kind of like a stagnation period. So I've been experiencing this over different periods of time throughout my sobriety, and I'm sure you've been sober longer than me, so I'm sure you have as well. So more recently, what I've started to do is felt that I've been in this little, almost like a dull period. You know, everything kind of got like boring, you know? So my first thing to do is to just switch up the meetings I go to. Have you done something similar to this? What kind of remedy do you have for that situation?
Do you wear underwear?
Huh? Yeah. What?
When you wake up in the morning, do you need to remember to put them on?
No.
It's just something, it's like part of you.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
For someone to stay sober and move through that purgatory, recovery has to be part of them. Mm-hmm. It has to be that thing that they do just because. Mm-hmm. I was doing a group at a facility yesterday. We talked a lot about that, and if it's part of you, none of the rest of the stuff doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. People don't make recovery part of them. They make it this other thing that they do over there. Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah, I've definitely been guilty of that in the past, and I can definitely say for sure now that it is a part of me. But even when it kind of gets like stale, like
you'll figure it out. Like think about it, right? Like if it becomes stale and it's part of you, you'll figure it out. Just like if you realized you've had the same pair of underwear on every day for 3 days,
change it up. I get what you're saying with that. Yeah,
it's not like a thing. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It doesn't.
See, but the thing I've had to get over is that realizing that it is just like a thing. You know what I mean? Like just part of it, because I get real far down the rabbit hole with like, oh my God, this isn't good. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
But I'm starting, I guess, to mature in sobriety and realizing that it is just part of the process.
Yeah, it's part of the process. But you can tell if you've really matured in sobriety. And in one of the books, in the Alcoholics Anonymous big book, there's a set of promises called the 10-step promises. Mm-hmm. And it says sanity has returned. Right? The most sane thing that has ever happened to me is, regardless of my mental outlook on 12-step recovery, knowing that I still have to go. Mm-hmm. Right? That's the same.
You mean like different opinions and things like that?
Well, like, I'm bored. I don't feel like doing this anymore.
Right. And going anyway.
I still have to go.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Like that is a sane thought. Mm-hmm. We see so often we see people who are doing really well, so they stop going.
Right. Right.
Sanity has not returned.
Mm-hmm. Or returned and then left again.
They haven't recovered.
Either
right.
Way,
like
yeah.
there because what we know for a fact is that to be in recovery long term, it needs long-term growth and work. Mm-hmm. And I think this whole idea of like getting stagnant, like sure, switch meetings, go get a sponsee, go volunteer at like an addiction treatment program or a recovery program, or go do something. Right. Get out of your way and go do something for somebody else. Mm-hmm. For me, like, and I say it all the time, like meetings get very, very boring. I got home last Sunday night from my home group, and my wife was like, "Oh, how was your meeting?" And I was like, "I couldn't wait to leave." Mm-hmm. Like I was just like not there. Mm-hmm. I do not identify to the people in recovery who say things like, I've never been to a meeting I didn't like. My first thought is you haven't been to enough meetings, clearly. And I think one of the problems is we don't, like, folks in 12-step recovery don't present a very realistic approach of what it looks like. Do I think that someone should be going to a meeting every single day for the rest of their life? It couldn't hurt. Do I think it's realistic? Probably not.
Right. Yeah. I don't think so either.
Especially young adults, like, if you're a young adult and you're listening to this, do us a favor and share this. Because, like, we have a really poor disadvantage. Think of how many folks, sit in meetings in their 60s, and for them to go to a meeting every day is very easy.
Because they don't have shit else to do.
They've been through school. Their wives can't stand them.
Right.
Their kids are grown up. So for them,
it's a different stage of life.
They just, it's like, go to the meeting, network with the good old boys, and go home. Mm-hmm. But, like, I went through grad school in sobriety. Mm-hmm. Like, I got married in sobriety. I started multiple businesses in sobriety. Like, if I hadn't been sober and doing 12-step recovery, I am 100% convinced that none of that would happen. 100%. That being said, I'm also 100% convinced that if I was going to a meeting every single day, I wouldn't have been able to make some of those things happen. Right.
Yeah, of course not. I mean, you have to make sacrifices somewhere along the way. I think, and I'm pretty sure we might even cover this in a podcast, or maybe I was talking about it with somebody recently, but you got to find whatever good balance works for you. And the balance system, I had it explained to me somewhere along the line. I think I actually shared this the other night at some meeting, but, like, say you got 10 oranges or chips or whatever you want to call it, and you only have so many baskets that, and the 10 chips represent, the amount of time you can spend on anything. And then you got to keep putting them in these different baskets, and then it adds up to your total value. So there's only so much time in the day, and everyone, delegates whatever chips they have into different baskets at different times. Like, for me, it's, work, 2 or 3 in work, main job, 2 in the other job, and then, the girlfriend, AA, and the other stuff. So,
that becomes the mature, like, you can tell somebody is getting sober when they start to have that mature perspective.
Right.
You can tell that somebody's just been checking boxes when, the second they get to stop doing something, they stop doing it. Mm-hmm. And it's sad. Like, we've been seeing it, we see it at Surfside. We've seen it every treatment program I've ever worked in. We see it with all the local, PHP programs, mm-hmm. They're there because they have to be there. And the second they don't have to be there, they're nowhere to be found.
Right.
And, it's always funny to me because, like, if you're in the first 6 months to year your sobriety and you're struggling to get to 2 meetings a week, you're never going to make it. Never. Mm-hmm. Something needs to change, and I think ultimately that's what Brian's talking about, like that purgatory. Something's really got to be different,
right.
And maybe that's getting through the step work. I can't tell you how many guys who are in that case that never have done any work. For me, one of the most interesting things about 12-step recovery is sponsoring somebody. Mm-hmm. It's like, it's more interesting than Oprah Winfrey, that's for sure. The stuff that comes on and helps you to also stay grounded with, your own personal recovery. Like, ideally, I'm not telling a guy sponsor to, like, talk to me about his problems when I'm jammed up, I'm not talking to my sponsor about it, right, or whatever it may mm-hmm. be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you don't want to be hypocritical like that.
I would also say, potentially, like, finding a new sponsor and getting through the steps again.
Yeah, we talked about that on our podcast about sponsorship, and you said something, and I was in a conversation with somebody actually about the podcast, but it's hard when you go through the steps the first time. For me, it was super hard to then find another sponsor and then continue to build that relationship, because it's different. It was very different for me going through the steps now than it was the first time. because the first time I was like super scared that I was going to shoot heroin or smoke crack again. So I was like really ready to do anything, and being able to kind of keep that motivation up over time is harder and harder. The beginning part was way easier than it is now to get like motivated to keep going through. But I think it is important for me to be around newer guys, because then it kind of keeps all that stuff super fresh.
And I would say too, like, revisit your step work. The person, whoever it is that, is saying, that asking about this purgatory is like, my challenge to you is like, where are you at with your amends? Like, go get your amends. Let's make every amends you're consciously aware of.
Right.
Like that'll get you unboard real quick.
Right.
But a lot of people don't do that. They have a spiritual awakening as a result of steps 9.5, and they stop doing the work. It's that simple. And then they wonder why they feel like shit. Well, they haven't finished the deal.
What they started.
A 12-step program, not a 9.5-step program. I think there's a lot of people in every AA community or 12-step community that I've lived. There's like different ways of working the steps. There's different thought processes. There's all sorts of stuff that goes with it. And I'm convinced that like the amount of people that stop doing the work is abundant. And they stop doing the work because their sponsor has stopped doing the work, and their sponsor's sponsor has stopped doing the work. And their sponsor's sponsor has stopped doing the work, right? So the guy who's saying like, hey, I'm stuck in this purgatory, maybe thinks he's made all the amends he's consciously aware of, but I guarantee if I sat down with him, I could pull out a laundry list.
Right, pull out a couple of them.
Because that happened to me. Like, I had a sponsor, he told me that I made all my amends, but when I sat down with somebody else, I realized that my sponsor actually didn't tell me I finished making my amends. What he said is I didn't have to go do all those. No, not for any real reason, except he just felt like it wasn't necessary.
Right.
That's not what any of the literature says.
Right.
So, and I've had people come back to me with like 5, 6, 7 years sober, and they're like, oh, I want to rework the steps. And I'm like, all right, well, get your amends cards.
Right.
Like,
yeah,
well,
start
why?
there.
It's like, well, let's we can start back at 1, but let's look at 9. Like, what? And it seems like they just can't do it.
Yeah, because I mean, I know for me on the amends process, like, the longer I stayed sober, the less and less you feel like you need to do them, because you're good, because you're not getting high anymore. So I think that's a big trap. I've have fallen into, and that I see other people fall into too. It's like, now, you've been sober for a little while, whether that's a year, 2 years, 3 years, 10 years, or whatever. And just keeping it going is it's tough.
7 years is like, there's a drop off. There's like these big drop offs in, like, let me pull it up. There's big drop offs in 12-step recovery. Just like in life in general. They say it in the kiteboarding industry that, people kiteboard for about 7 years. Like 7 years seems to be this number where like your life, the course of 7 years, your life changes drastically.
Right.
Marriage, kids.
Yeah, like look at where you were at 7 years
school.
ago.
Oh yeah, where was I 7 years ago?
I was in my first rehab.
It was like 6 years sober. 2011.
2012, 7 years ago. It's 2019.
I clearly wasn't doing math. I think I was living in New Hampshire at that time.
I didn't know you even lived in New Hampshire. You went from Vermont to New Hampshire?
Yeah, I was a program director at a facility up there.
Oh. I think I did know that, actually.
Yeah.
I think I did know that.
Oh, no. Should I take this call? It's Home Depot about to tell me that they're not going to do what I need them to do.
Sure, take the call. I think we're about wrapped up on this. On this topic. So if you're struggling to get anything here, go ahead. Go take the call. I'll wrap it up. If you're struggling with that purgatory period, just keep moving. All you got to do is you can jump back into it. Find a new sponsor, find new meetings. You just have to literally do something. So we really appreciate you listening to this podcast. Please keep the feedback coming. If you have any comments or suggestions, drop us a line on our Facebook page. You can DM us on Instagram. And, thanks again always for watching.